Welcome back. ActionSA says it will review its approach to coalitions. The party says any future involvement must be premised on the ability to effectively deliver honest services in a stable way. ActionSA has held a meeting in the wake of the dramatic collapse of the multi-party coalition in Johannesburg. Is there hope for coalitions in Tshwane and Ekurhuleni? And what will it take for multi-party governance to be successful? Let's discuss this further with ActionSA's Gauteng leader, Bongani Baloyi. Thank you very much, Mr. Baloyi, for your time this evening.
Thank you for having me here.
So precarious, unstable coalitions are definitely nothing new in South Africa. So what's prompted this meeting now?
Look, I think it's the experience over the past 10 years and how we've gotten to a stage where we lost a city of Johannesburg in a coalition structure. And we really believe that it's unfortunate because those who are affected severely are those who really rely on government for services, and it's important for government to be stable. Now, for government to be stable, coalitions themselves must be stable. So we've said, let's take a step back, let's reflect about how we got to this point, and certainly let's try and map out a way of where can we get to stable politics.
So what are some of the main concerns that you discussed, specifically around the coalitions that are currently under threat in Gauteng, which are both Tshwane and Ekurhuleni?
Look, I think Tshwane is relatively stable because the current coalition has a majority. But if you look at Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, unstable. Ekurhuleni is still led by a coalition government, but it's a minority government. If the EFF and the ANC come together, they've got majority to remove the mayor. And in Johannesburg, we've seen what has happened recently. And what prompted us is also the realization and the strategic importance of these metros in Johannesburg and in the country. And we can't be part of something that sustains instability because ultimately it creates an environment for thieves to thrive and services not to get to residents. And ultimately, the currency in these bargaining conversation is not about what's good for the community, but it's what do you get, what position are you giving me, and vice versa. And we felt that we need to just press a reset and reflect deeply about this and really realize our part in the current situation, but equally say how do we learn from it and how do you continue going forward and engage other stakeholders around the idea of how do you stabilize coalitions in Gauteng.
So before I get to, I wanted to ask you, what were the decisions? What were these incredible outcomes? But we're going to get to that in a moment. I want to talk first about the future of the coalitions, specifically Ekurhuleni. You said Tshwane is relatively stable at this stage. Let's talk about Ekurhuleni. What's likely to play out in the next coming weeks? And how are you going to approach that to try and determine the outcome?
Look, I think, as I've stated before, that both ANC and EFF put together, they've got enough votes to create a new government for themselves. So it just takes to a point where both have a sufficient agreement and to understand. And for us is to understand how far and what's the intention. That's why we've said, as part of our press statement, we're going to engage all political parties in Gauteng to get a true sense and have a conversation about how to stabilize government in Gauteng. Because ultimately, if our point of departure is our selfish interest as a party, then I think we're in it for the wrong reasons. But the question really to respond to is what is in the interest of South Africa. And that compels us to speak to more people to create stability. Because much as we may not like it that we differ with various political parties from an ideological point of view, our people don't care. Because water, still water, electricity and sanitation, they need a stable government. And we did not come into politics to sustain a mess and uncertainty. We want to have stability. That's very important, even though it doesn't work for our party's specific gains, but it's good for the residents, and that's something that we're willing to consider. So we've agreed on a process to start engaging various stakeholders, ultimately to come out with a proposal to Senate to advise them on whichever direction we propose to make at that stage.
So ideologically, how does one go about convincing opposition parties that they should take the same kind of stance on putting residents who voted them in the first place first?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's an ideological question. It's a pragmatic question. And reminding all of these public representatives when they take an oath of office to council, because that becomes the primary guide. Everything else collapses at that stage when you take your oath of office. So we really want to appeal to political parties when we start engaging them to put centrally on the table what is in the interest of stable coalition and stable governance. Because if we undermine governance in Gauteng, I think we're going to regress in a spectacular way. And ultimately, while politicians fight about who's wrong, who's right, the communities and those who are in the worst of situation will sink even further. and to bring things back to normality then in law enforcement will be a fast stretch for us. So we also recognize that we need to do something now, and we need to be part of a positive change and really push towards stability in the province.
Well, what you describe has been the exact position of Joburg residents over the past week and a half. So sitting back, watching various exchanges on television with blame shifting, between ActionSA particularly and the DA, where the DA said specifically that this happened because the agreement between various parties was not adhered to. And I know that's been refuted by ActionSA members in the media. So going forward, how do we, once an agreement has been put in place, make that the primary objective, to stick to that agreement? Do you think that's a problem?
No, I don't think that is a problem. But remember, agreements in themselves have clauses that necessitate or make it possible for you to amend these agreements. And it's important for political parties to appreciate that when the situation changes and there's a need at that particular point in time to say, how do you now respond to this developing and emerging situation to mitigate risk on governance and stability, we do so in good faith. Not when that situation comes, as the DA did, to say, this is our position, as if they want anything. I think that was self-defeating in a way, and really brought the situation we find ourselves in. And I think in future we must really appreciate that you can't say it's my position or that one's position. It's the people's position. It's about deploying of competent human beings, whether they come from ActionSA or somebody else, but let's deploy the best to deal with the complex environment of government. So we've learned from that experience, and I must really apologize to the residents of these metros who have become spectators to such an unbecoming act and something so embarrassing. And from our part as ActionSA, we've learned from it and deeply apologize to the South African public.
So you've said you want to engage various political parties. You've also said you specifically want to engage with and sit down with the DA to resolve how you can better work together. Given your background coming from the DA, do you think that gives you a better perspective on how to negotiate those terms? Do you think that's possible?
Look, I think the DA as an institution has undergone some changes. Some of the things that I see is foreign to me. But I really think that we can try and put personal issues aside and try and make the central topic about what's good for South Africans and these metros. And we're also engaging, by the way, South African local government. We're also engaging IMATU, also engaging SAMU as well, because these are people who feel the wrath of this instability in these municipalities, the workers. So we really want to gain their perspective and understanding and some ideas about how we can deal better with these, and various political parties as well. DA, across the spectrum, really want to have a meaningful conversation with them.
Well, we look forward to those meaningful conversations as residents of these various metros. Thank you very much for coming in to talk to us.
Thank you.
That was ActionSA's Gauteng leader, Bongani Baloyi.